In today's video, I'm going to show you different types of ventilation outlets for your property. I'll show you some typical ones, I'll give you some ideas, and I will show you some posh ones. I'm Marek from MTP Cooling, and if you need anything from air conditioning or ventilation, you found the right place, because that's exactly what we do. So let's move to the valves. Now the very common one and the standard, typical, is something like that. Now that's the supply valve and that is the extract valve. Now this one is slightly bigger, but it doesn't matter. It's the shape what I want to show you, okay? Okay, so but let's discuss the fresh air, okay? So the typical valve, what you have, you've got that body. Once you have the hole in the ceiling, you put that into that hole, screw that in. On top of it, you put your duct, and then you put your main cover on, okay? And that's it. That's all you have, right? Now the middle bit, you can spin it, and as you can see, it's going up and down. Now this is where you adjust your airflow, and that is normally done by the commissioning engineer. So once this is set, you shouldn't really touch it. Now what we tend to do, whatever is possible, before we bring the ductwork into the valve, we put a volume control damper, and then we adjust the airflow using that damper. So when we install that, we can install it in a way that the client likes it more. Sometimes you need to go, higher, sometimes you need to go deeper, and sometimes clients just don't like it and they want to open up or close it down because it looks neater. But anyway, that's us. This is how we do it. Okay, so that's the typical valve. And then this sort of valves, they come in a different shape and forms. This one, for example, is made from stainless steel. It's pretty much the same principle. You've got the body, screw that body into the wall or the ceiling, and then you've got that element. That element has also the middle bit adjustable. Once you've got everything installed, you put that in, and that's it, okay? So these are the typical ones, okay? So let me show you the next one, and this is Lindab Airy, okay? Now this is a little bit more sophisticated. What you're gonna have in here is obviously nice box, and by the way, these typical ones, they usually come in a plastic bag. So this is a nicer looking one. Now as you can see, once this is installed, this is what you're gonna see, right? In comparison to this one, so you can see the difference, okay? Now once this is installed, I don't know whether you can see that, but this is also sticking out from the plasterboard. So in here you have your decorative panel, okay, and then you've got your main valve like this, okay? So the black element is the element which holds your fascia panel, but also that element is to adjust the airflow. The same principle, you just screw that in or screw it out, and until you get the correct airflow. So if you look at the frame is actually very similar, right? You've got that bit which is sticking out, which is exactly the same like that one. So really the only difference is the fascia panel, okay? Now what we tend to see on the installations after, sometimes, that element here, it has that black metal circle, and then you've got this fluffy cloth, okay? Now this is to mark, well, I don't actually know what this is for. What I do know that bit is getting dusty very quickly. So I personally tend to remove that, but the client obviously can have it. If we put that in there, so if we put that in there, you can see it's all nice black, but obviously the airflow is reduced. So if I were to use that, I would need to go higher, put that in. There you go, you see? So it is nicer than the standard ones, but wait to see my favorite. Okay, so let me put that back and let me show you another one. And the other one is also made by Lindab. Okay, but this one is slightly different. So that comes in 2 boxes. Now, the first time I bought it, I've made a mistake of buying the body and not buying the fascia panel, as I thought they're coming together, but they're not. So this is actually a larger valve for 160 millimeter diameter. Oh, come on. Okay, so this one, because it's much larger, okay, personally I would expect to have the volume control damper somewhere along that duct, so we can use that purely for the decorative purposes only. Okay, but anyway, once this is installed, okay, you're gonna get your fascia panel, and a fascia panel from Lindab, you can have a different one. You can have a circuit, you can have an oval, square. In this case, I've got the circle. Okay, so once you have your valve, you stick that in, and again, actually I need to put it up. You stick that in, and it's pretty much the same thing as you had with the smaller one. Okay, sometimes you have to use a larger valve. You have to remember, the larger the valve, the quieter it will be, given the same air volume. Okay, so yeah, so it's pretty much the same thing, but you have to remember to always check when you're ordering whether the valve comes with a fascia panel or not, and if it's not, you need to order that separately. Obviously you need to look at the price as well, because that, especially when you're quoting, you want to make sure that you've allowed for that. They're not super cheap, okay, although they're not super expensive either. Now then, this one, this is my favorite, although this is not the most expensive. Okay, now even the packaging is like amazing, because well, it's just amazing. Okay, so you have the first cover. Now in that cover you've got a little manual, and then you've got the plate for the installation. Also, for your information, this valve is with a plaster frame, where the other ones I showed you, they go into you cut in the hole, you put in the body, and then once you put this valve in, you don't need to do anything else, where this one involves much more work to fit it in place, and then you need to plaster around it. But the final effect is just absolutely fantastic. Now that's your body, okay, and it's quite heavy. Okay, so that's the body. Let me just move that out of the way, and then you've got the plate. This is the plate. Now again, this is a square, but they come in a round options as well. So let me show you what we have in here. So if I take that out, you've got another protection here. Okay, it doesn't want to come out. Okay, so this is what you have. Okay, look how beautiful that is. How beautiful that is. Now that bit inside, this is interesting item for that valve. It comes with the valve. Now this is a, well, I would call it's a volume control damper and attenuator at the same time. Okay, but I will come back to it in a second. So you can see the quality of this is just unbelievable. Okay, it's just unbelievable. You get the fascia panel, and then the fascia panel has this round metal. Okay, and that round metal you're sticking into those 3 magnets. They're very strong magnets. Okay, so there's not really worried that it's gonna come out. So once you place that in, you just need to adjust it. That is it's nice and square, and look at this. You see, it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And now imagine that the plaster is actually going over that, right? So it's a ceiling with a nice cutout inside. Very good quality. And then in terms of the installation, you just have to remember that having those 2 plates, you screw in those plates on the side, and this is where you're installing that onto the plasterboard. Now in here, I don't know whether you can see it, but you've got the holes and you've got adjustment, so you can put, if you put the 2 plasterboards, you just adjust that as you require. Okay, now the last thing about this is that element. Okay, now what I like in this element is because unlike this typical valve, right, where you can adjust the airflow here, you can't really adjust the airflow in here. Now I would definitely go for the VCD somewhere along the ductwork, but because we have this, right, imagine you've got that in your bathroom, and your bathroom is a typical bathroom, and this valve is connected to your either MEV system or MVHR. You only need 8 liters a second. Okay, so if you need 8 liters a second, and that's a 125 diameter duct, the velocity through that, it will be very very small, and therefore the noise generated by the valve is going to be very, very low. But even though if you use this and you just remove, I don't know whether you can see it, but you just simply push out the elements, right? And then once you push them out, you obviously need to test the airflow. Okay, but I'm pretty sure for 8 liters a second that will be probably more than enough. So I would still use that, even though I've got the VCD and I've got attenuators. Maybe you've used the acoustic flexible on the final connections, but because I have this, I would still use it, because that will just give you an additional noise reduction. And this is it. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. You put that in there, you adjust it, okay, and that's it. All right, now you need to look at the, obviously you need to look at the prices, but this is under £100. Now in comparison, this sort of valves you can get for probably £10. So this is this is still way more expensive than this, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. It's just beautiful. It's just simply beautiful. Okay, so now let me show you the final one. Okay, and the final one is the most expensive extract valve or supply valve we come across. It's not gold plated or anything like that, but now that is the box. That is the box for a single valve, 125 diameter. Now that is 125 diameter, okay? So in theory, you could put 6 of them here if I really want to squeeze them. But that's just one valve. So let me show you. So the first bit you have, obviously you've got some screws, some manual, and then you've got your base. Okay, that's your base. And then you've got your plate. So let me show you the base first. Now this one is sort of similar to the previous one I showed you, okay? But is different, okay? Now the way to install that, as you can see, that edge here, this is the distance of 2 plasterboards, okay? Now if you're only using one plasterboard, because remember that surface here, okay, this has to be flush with the ceiling, okay? If you're using just one plasterboard, then you're gonna have to use those spacers, okay? So you got 4 of those. You clip them on the side, okay? And then this is basically your first layer of the plasterboard, okay? And then you put your second layer of plasterboard, screw that in, and that's it, okay? Now that does not come with any additional VCD or attenuators like the other one, which is shame because, you know, it would be nice to have it. But you've got this safety line in case the front will come off. I'm quite surprised that the other valve doesn't have it. I guess they rely on the magnets, that they're strong enough. But anyway, this is the plate. Now look, this is 125 diameter valve, okay? 125. This is that, okay? This is that. But well, so if I attach this, and let me just show you. So you got those 3 bolts. You need to put these bolts into places. Okay, now, and those bolts are basically the fittings for the plate, okay? Now the magnets are strong, but you know, it's better be safe than sorry. So you have to remember that there is a screw which you need to put there and put that line in there as well. So in case that falls, it will be at least hanging and it's not going to kill anyone, okay? Because it's quite heavy. But anyway, let's put that in. Okay? So this is it. Okay? This is your 125 diameter valve, which is exactly the same as this one. Right? Can you see the similarity? I can. Anyway, this valve is over 100 pounds. It's quite fragile, so you have to be careful. But yeah, you need to pay 100-something pounds for that valve, and then you need to pay definitely more to fit that in comparison to this, okay? But the final result is amazing. Now if I was to compare and choose the nicest one, I would not really go for this one, the most expensive. I would go for the other one. The main reason I would go for this valve, okay, let me just point that out. So the main reason is that once you plaster these edges, okay, this is all flush, okay, and I think that looks really, really nice. Where the most expensive valve I come across, once you install that, it's actually sticking out. You see? You've got this gap and it's still sticking out. Now I guess you can paint that with your ceiling, but you know, you will see this. I guess it's all up to individual, but personally I would go for that one. Now lastly, what I want to show you is the different type of grill, the valve, and that's the slot, okay? This is just one typical one, okay? It's a small linear bar with a plaster frame. Now this is, the people tend to go for the slots. They don't want any circular valves in the ceiling, because that they consider to be nicer, okay? The problem with that is that not only you need to order a bespoke grill, but you also need the plenum box for that, because that grill doesn't come with anything else. That's the plenum box, I mean this element. Oh, come on. Okay, so if I call this plenum box, and that's the valve, okay, they come together, right? Where this is just a grill. So you need a plenum box behind it to which you connect your ducting, okay? So this will work out more expensive. It's not gonna be nowhere near this, okay? But what people tend to go the most is just a slot, okay? So rather than having a grill or the valve or you know things like this, they just want to create a slot somewhere in the ceiling, and they are happy with that. In the high-end residential, personally, this is what I would see the most. Probably that as well, because as I said, I really like this, but the slot I would see the most. Now there is a tendency that as you go to the high-end property, although the slot is nice, but what you really want to see is nothing, okay? You go to the bathroom, you look at the ceiling, you look at the walls, and you see nothing, but you still have an extraction. So that's what we tend to do, wherever possible, is to create a slot or create some valve which is hidden, but given the performance which is required, okay? In many places, I would strongly recommend to go for a slot, but you just need to be aware, and this is a plaster frame, okay? So you see these ugly holes, but you have to remember, once this is screwed in, it's going to be plastered, and all you're going to see is just a nice slot, okay? So the thing you have to remember, once you have that slot, you need to order the plenum box which goes on top of it with the spigot for your ducting. And because you have no way of adjusting the airflow here, you're gonna need to have some volume control damper on the ducting to adjust the airflow and then leave it. The other thing is, people tend to go, they want the smallest, the thinnest. So you have to remember, if you go too small, it will create a noise, okay? If we want to achieve 8 liters a second as per regulations in a bathroom, the 8 liters a second is very tiny amount. But if you try to squeeze 8 liters a second with just that part of that opening, yeah, then that will generate much more noise than if you're trying to squeeze it through the entire length. So the longer the slot, the quieter it will be. Obviously that depends on the entire installation as well, but in principle, the larger the slot, the quieter it will be. So this is good to remember. So that will be everything for today, and if you have any questions, write in the comment section or give me a call.